Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Daily News Editorial. In this channel, we regularly cover editorial page section of newspaper. In today's video, I will be covering the lead page editorial article of the Hindu newspaper dated 4th of September, that's today. This article talks about US and Afghanistan, the recent exit of US from Afghanistan and road ahead. So let's begin. Certainly not the end of the road for the US, even if the Afghan exit was disastrous for various reasons. To declare it as the demise of America is a misreading. The future of Afghanistan is yet to be determined. But the debate has abruptly shifted to the future of United States after its withdrawal from Afghanistan. This may be the first time in history that a ruler is sought to be punished for ending a war of 20 years. Pax Americana died in Kabul. A strategic thinker declares this is a watershed moment that will bring down the curtain on the West's long ascendancy, he predicts. Others say that the damage can be limited if US President Joe Biden resigns. Some US congressmen have submitted a questionnaire to Mr. Biden raising such issues as the Taliban acquiring nuclear weapons. Mercifully, there is no significant opinion that the US should not have withdrawn its troops or that the US should reoccupy Afghanistan. The US has done the right thing in the wrong ways, says another learned commentator. Defining event. To understand the present plight of the US, we need to go back to the terrorist bombing of 9/11, which was a game changing global experience. It transformed the geopolitics of the world, which was determined by the size of the nuclear arsenal or the nuclear weapon states. The most powerful country in the world, which had the capacity to destroy the world many times over, became powerless before a few terrorists who had only knives and forks as a weapons. In one clean swoop, the theories of the balance of power, mutually assured destruction, and nuclear weapons superiority went up in smoke with the Twin Towers of New York. Once the responsibility of the attack was tracked to Osama bin Laden and the terrorists in Afghanistan, it was imperative for the US to retaliate by overthrowing the Taliban regime and hunting out and killing bin Laden. Benefits of the US presence. The US accomplished this mission with a short period, but it was not able to withdraw because the Afghanistan government was unable to withhold the onslaught of the Taliban and the other terrorist groups. Even neighboring countries, including India, were strongly in favor of continuing the American presence. Pakistan played a double game of being a partner on the one hand and an adversary on the other. It was not a matter of America's imposing themselves, but being invited to provide a certain stability for Afghanistan. The result of their presence was the prevalence of relative peace in the region, except that Pakistan fattened the Taliban with American largesse. Largesse. In the process, the troops in Afghanistan protected the homeland and the Americans because Taliban and other groups were kept engaged in Afghanistan territory. At this moment, when American failures at the time of withdrawal dominates the news, it is worth recalling that the US presence in Afghanistan had succeeded in containing the dangers of terrorism for 2 decades. Considering that terrorism has endured in the broader Considering that terrorism has endured in the broader West Asia, Middle East, and the attacks and victims worldwide are 3 to 5 times higher annually than 2001 9 by 11. The benefits of the American presence should not be underestimated, even though the cost was high in terms of American money and lives. We should also remember that the clear mandate given to Mr. Biden was to clean up the Augean stables left behind by his predecessor President Donald Trump, and how the world as a whole and majority of the US citizens have heaved a sigh of relief that the US finally had a predictable, steady, and experienced leader to combat the novel coronavirus pandemic and the racism in the country and to recover its position in the center of the world that the Chinese were hoping to grab. Mr. Biden moved in earnest to return to the Paris Agreement climate, resume the dialogue on the Iran nuclear deal, and to reassure America's traditional allies that the US would stand by them. He gave a clear signal to China and Russia that no confrontation would be tolerated, but cooperation, wherever possible, will be pursued. The Afghan exit. Withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan was yet another unfinished agenda he had inherited, and what he did was merely to follow up the agreement reached with the Taliban and announced a deadline, in the expectation that the Afghan forces, trained and equipped by the Americans and the Kabul government, would step into the vacuum. As Mr. Biden pointed out, the decision about Afghanistan was not just about Afghanistan. It was about ending an era of major military operations to remake other countries. But the series of events that happened till the end of August 2021 completely wiped out what should have been the good ending of a partly successful war on terror. Even if the exit became a disaster because of the wrong calculations on the part of military advisors who stand condemned by the retired flag officers for the tragic and avoidable debacle, to declare it as the end of the road for Mr. Biden and the United States is unfair and graceless. History is replete with events of extremely folly by rulers who survived because of the many other mitigating factors in their favor. By those standards, Mr. Biden's presidency has every reason to survive. The decisiveness with which he had handled the debris and exit should receive approbation. As a true commander in chief, he stood by his generals and took the blame. He has not even been provoked to attack the Taliban or to criticize the Afghan forces for their betrayal of their patrons. In fact, he went out of his way to announce that Taliban was helpful in facilitating the evacuation, which was completed before the deadline. Interestingly, it was Mr. Biden who set the August 31st deadline, which was turned into an ultimatum by the Taliban. Many commentators have argued that the Kabul fiasco was worse than Vietnam, Tehran 9 by 11, Iraq, and COVID 19 because the details of other disastrous developments had lost their sharpness with the passage of time. Whatever may have been the horrors of these events, no president was held accountable for them and removed. In the case of US President General Ford, 59% of the people said that he deserved none of the blame at all. Only 2% held him responsible, though he lost the election in 1976. President Ronald Reagan's misadventure in Lebanon. President Ronald Reagan's misadventure in Lebanon was criticized by 60% of Americans in 1984, but he won the election later that year. There was reasons for these presidents to continue to serve the nation. taking the reverses in certain areas in their stride. As of now, there is no alternative to President Biden to lead the country. After this, having learned a bitter lesson from the Afghan experience, a CNN commentator remarked that the withdrawal may hurt him in the midterm in 2020 and a president election in 2024. They could just as easily have no impact at all. No setting sun. Even more unfortunate is the conclusion that the US itself lost its place in the world on account of its failure to have a sagacious leader or a competent commander in chief. A superpower does not sink or rise on account of a single leader. It is still the most powerful economic and military power the whole constellation of world rotate around which the whole constellation of world rotates. In fact, the world has a stake in ensuring that a democratic nation leads the world rather than an expansionist dictatorship which has no public opinion to restrain it. The free world has a responsibility to maintain the American leadership of the world till a wiser and more benign alternative is found. Much has been written about a post American world for some years now, but it looks that the demise of America, as Mark Twain said about the reports of his own death, is greatly exaggerated. T.P. Srinivasan, IFS 1967, is a former ambassador of India and government and governor of India of the IAEA. He is also chairman, academic council director, NSS Academy of Civil Services, and director general, Kerala International Center. That's end of this article. If you like my video, please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.